Hello there, and welcome to another session review. This is Terrorblade from PokerStrategy.com. I'm doing another full ring 25-50 on Party Poker, fixed limit, and I'm just doing another session review. So I'm just going to be going through different hands I played in the session and talking about them in more depth than is possible with a live video. So I'll just get straight into it. On the top left hand table here I've got Ace Queen offsuit, and I'm doing a raise from the mid position, which is standard. It's just something hard to deal with in certain situations when you don't hit, is donk bets. If he donked this flop, which is dry and drawless, except for a one gut shot, I guess, it's hard to tell where we stand, and more or less the only way I can find to combat this kind of play is to note him and watch him as he does these donk bets and things like that, and how he plays versus other players and what his donk bets mean, and basically record notes on him and eventually get a better picture of how this guy plays. But unfortunately he didn't donk bet the flop. He just called and then donked on the turn. I can't make a call here or a raise because I'm only ahead against a bluff, and the pot's only 4 big bets. So in this kind of situation, I'd recommend that you note him, and then next time you have a made hand, which you can want to see a showdown with, see what he did it with. Here, it's probably not such a situation like that, because donking out on the turn has its advantages from a good player's point of view. If they think you're bluffing and you raise and your bet gets raised, you can get a nice 3-bet on the turn, which would maximize your value. And also I can see him playing check call flop, check raise turn, I guess, if there wasn't an additional king. But it's the fish on this limit probably don't think about stuff like that. So as a beginner, I'd just recommend you fold in this spot with only ace high, and make a note of him and just watch next time. So if he does this with air often, then you can probably call down and get money from his bluffs, whereas a raise, if he's not bluffing, then you're going to lose extra money. So yeah, I'd just say play fold in this spot and not try to raise or be tricky or anything like that. And on this other table in the top right hand corner, I have AK, and I raised, got a couple of calls, then a 3-bet, then I take this opportunity to cap and maximize my equity advantage against the other players. But the flop isn't so good for us. We didn't hit an ace or a king. These players who just called could easily have just hit this flop, and I would normally call in this spot. Maybe you can at this limit, but it's not a habit you should be getting into because of these players behind me. If they raise, if they hit a 7 or a 9 or whatever they want to raise with, we're not getting the correct odds, and considering this guy donked after I capped, makes me think that if someone raised behind me and after I called, he would most likely 3-bet, which definitely doesn't give us good enough odds, paying 75 cents to win a pot of about $5 by then, $5 or $6 maybe. And then again, we could be also drawing dead because of the aces and the AA or KK possibility. So I decide against a call here, but if it was just heads up, I would definitely call. But just because the players behind us add a bit of uncertainty to the odds that we're getting. So I think that's the correct play in that spot. Yeah, as you see, not to be results orientated, but the guy behind us raised, and okay, his friend I didn't realize there was such crazy action after me, and he capped. Okay, well, this probably would have been the worst case scenario. In some cases you'll get away with it, but I think on average you won't be getting precise enough odds, and you don't want to be getting yourself into too many marginal situations. Okay. Let me just go on to the next hand. So I've got queens here. Okay, I raised pre-flop. I got a caller, and now I'm betting out. It's quite a little bit of a drawy flop. He could have hit a 10. Not sure what he's really holding. If he's holding a draw, flush draw just got there. No straight draw just got there. He could be calling down with a lot of worse hands like pocket pairs or 5. Or sometimes ace high, so basically we're betting against that kind of hand. If I was raised on this turn, then I would call down because, well, 1, I have the flush draw, and 2, I'm quite possibly still ahead. Well, definitely enough of the time. If he raises, the pot's going to be 350, and then I have to pay a dollar to see the showdown, and I only have to be ahead 1 out of 4 times, not including the time that I hit my flush and it beats him, assuming he's not holding a better flush. So a lot of players might raise this because they picked up a flush draw, or because it's scary, or just because they're bad. So I'd like to call down in this situation if I was raised here. As played, I hit a queen, so you know, not exactly difficult situation. Okay, I've got ace queen suited on this table down here. I 3-bet pre-flop, and I have second pair top kicker, which isn't too bad, although kings do lie in that range. I still will be ahead against a worse queen and maybe a pocket pair or something, and there will be drawers who will probably call down as well, so just want to get value out of them. However, I was raised on the flop in position by this guy. I definitely can't fold here, and you don't want to get into the habit of calling the flop and then folding the turn unless you know he's passive in particular, because of that will probably carry through to the higher limits. When you start playing short-handed 50 cent $1 and 1-2 and stuff like that, you can't be folding second pair top kicker like this, because there are players around who are trying to exploit you. I don't think I have good enough equity here to 3-bet. I'd just be giving money to a better hand and making a worse hand fold perhaps. So on the river, the flush draw got there. However, the extra king makes it a bit less likely that he was holding a king in the first place. So hopefully, best case scenario is that he's been betting at me with the worst queen, and we're going to get value out of him. However, raising would possibly get the worst queen to fold, so it'd be counterintuitive to raise here. Although the passiveness of this limit, maybe I'm behind already. However, we're getting 1 to 10 at this point. And so far, if we disregarded the fact that we could be ahead, we had outs to enough odds to improve even. 5 outs. Which was enough to call on the flop on the turn for sure. But now that we're at the river, I think we're ahead definitely 1 out of 10 times to make a call. Partly because even if a king hadn't fallen, I thought we'd have a good enough chance anyway, and also, you know, the king reduces the chance of him having a king hand. And just for fun, I guess we'll see what he has. But yeah, this is I'll call in this situation all the time. I mean, you know, you're ahead against quite a lot of hands that could raise, because we don't know this guy at all. He could be a normal passive fish, he could just be an aggressive player, and he was holding the same queen as us, ace queen. Which was, I guess it was okay played there. That's probably how I'd play the ace queen as well. Fast forwarding a little bit, we've got pocket 2s in the bottom right hand table here. Pocket pairs at lower limits are really good, I found, because you can cheaply see the flop most of the time, or you'd get decent odds, like in this position here, where I call every single time from the big blind after a raiser and a limper. And someone who's cold called the raise. Now, I could try and check raise here, but I don't know how often he's continuation betting, if he's continuation betting 80% of the time, or more or less often, I'm not sure. I don't want there to be any chance of a check, because this is a really bad flop for free cards. For someone with a hand that's vulnerable like my one, and has a lot of strength now, so I likely have the nuts at the moment. That is out of these three. I don't think. I guess queens is possible. Threes isn't. Yeah, these two cards aren't that scary. For me, I've likely got the best hand 99.99% of the time. So I'm just trying to protect it as much as I can, because if I can get a raise out of the pre-flop raiser, then it's all worth it, because then this guy would get kicked out, whereas before he might just call the single bet with a flush draw or something like that. But as it turned out, he only called, which is interesting. So yeah, I bet the turn again, hopefully catching a raise so I can 3-bet. And I'm just going to bet it the whole way now. I've got a full house. Yep. Yep, so that's how I like to play that. And in the top left hand table I played a hand at the same time. Here we go. A raiser and a caller pre-flop. Someone who posted the blind and the cutoff folded. So it's 25 to win $1.60. That's definitely good enough odds with Jack 10 unsuited connector. And obviously just gonna play check fold on this flop. We didn't hit anything. He didn't continuation bet, which is interesting. And now that we had our 10, I'm not sure why I didn't bet there. The correct play would be to bet there, because no indication that there's a king. Because he was first to act the pre-flop raiser, so the guy behind him must think, okay, he doesn't have a king. Then if he had a king himself, he would bet, I assume. I didn't bet. I should have bet and then called down to a raise. But as I played it, now I don't think I can raise. So I'm just going to call it down. It doesn't really matter which river card comes, I guess. It's going to be really weird if this guy is a king. And he had pocket kings. What a flop to slow play pocket kings on. That's really, really bad play. You can make a note on a guy like this that he plays his monster hands trickily, like skipping out a continuation bet, which is just stupid. There's so many draws out there that could destroy his hand, which is just, it's just kind of funny the way he played that, because he also missed out on some value as well, because the other guy probably would have called the flop if he was just going to call the turn. I mean, so he missed out on that. And also, if I had a made hand like a king, and I had bet the flop and he just called or something instead of raising, that would have been him missing value again, which I'm not sure what he would have done if I had had a hand and bet the flop after he checked. Anyway, he's just a bad player, and you want to note such play so that you can avoid being trapped in the future. If he misses a continuation bet, then you know it's a bit more likely that he's holding the monster hand instead of just not hitting the flop. Okay, let's go forward to this hand here. I've got some queens again. But they all folded. Okay, so we got ace queen here. We raised pre-flop and we got two callers. So it's not very scary flop, and it's quite drawy. There are some straight and flush draws possible, and now on the turn someone donks out, but I've picked up the flush draw in addition to my overcard, so I can make a call there. Even if the guy behind me raises, it's still not getting bad odds at all. And because there's only 2 club hands higher than me, and I think many of the lower ones would continue betting here. So I think I'm ahead most of the time, and it's not that they're going to fold their lower flush. So a raise in this situation is more appropriate than a call. Okay, so I got pocket kings and I raised pre-flop and managed to isolate one guy. And this is a pretty good flop because I don't know what he's holding here, but he could have hit it easily. Therefore, he's probably going to give me some action. On this turn, if I'm raised here against these players, I'm not going to 3-bet because I think I'd just be giving money to a better hand. I don't know what would raise me here. An 8 definitely would. I don't think a 7 would. And because of the passiveness of these guys, I don't think they're raising a draw too often. So I'd just revert to call down mode if I was raised at this point. As played, he just calls down himself, but in this situation with an overpair, that's something I like to do. So let's just have a look at this next hand. I'm dealt 10s on this bottom right hand table, and I raise it up. And the flop is pretty good for me because hands with outs against me like king something, queen something will be able to find a fold pretty easy on the flop, I'm hoping. But at the same time, if he's hit an ace himself, it puts me in a difficult situation. Yep, so he raises the flop here in position. If he had an ace and I was him, if I had an ace and I was in his position, I would call the flop and probably raise the turn for maximum value. However, he's just raised the flop, which could mean he has any pair, I guess. So I'm gonna call down, providing no additional overcards come down. And 6 isn't a great card because second pair beats me, and this is probably a really horrible card because now every kind of conceivable draw got there, and second pair before is beating me, so I don't think we really beat anything except a pocket pair or a bluff after that really horrible river card. Up here in the top left hand table, I pick up king 9 suited from MP3, and I raise pre-flop, and this is quite a nice flop for me. My plan is to raise if he donks into me, or bet myself if he checks. And we've got a reasonable kicker. It's not very likely that we're behind in this situation with top pair middle kicker like this. There are a couple of kings that are better than us. After this card, I'll just call down to a raise. If he donks out here, I'm going to raise and then call if he raises again. But the whole way I'm assuming I'm ahead, sort of thing. I don't really have much to worry about in that case. About the flush, if he just calls the turn, I would definitely raise a river donk because there are some worse kings that might do that. Up here in the top right hand corner, I had ace-6 of hearts, and I think I just called pre-flop, and with only one overcard and a running flush draw and a running straight draw, that's enough to call, in my opinion, in this spot, considering there was 2 players behind us. Alrighty, so here on the top left hand table we've been dealt pocket queens from the small blind. This is a really nice hand at the lower limits. When you're playing for value most of the time, queens will not be busted that often, as with some of the lower pairs. It's not as good as AA or KK, but in general we get quite a lot of value from hands like this that are already made. So long as an A and a K don't fall or something horrible like that in a multi-way pot, most of the time if there's no overcards will be ahead. So we raised after a limper, a couple of limpers, to get most value out of them. The flop's pretty good. There's not really many draws possible on the flop except for a straight draw, I guess. And the possibility of someone holding a 4 isn't that likely. But they could have had a 6, they could have a pocket pair of their own, maybe they're just calling with cards, not even overcards, I don't know. The players do a lot of crazy things. So on the turn, I'm assuming I'm still ahead here, it's become markedly more drawy. They could have picked up some draws on the turn, and I get a raise from this guy here. This isn't, for me, it's an insta 3-bet. Especially with this guy calling, it's pretty obvious he's on a draw or a much worse hand than queen. So I'm definitely 100% ahead of this guy all of the time. So I'm basically ahead of this guy most of the time as well. He could have hit an 8, maybe he has a flush draw or something like that. He could have a 4, or maybe an overpair that he played really badly. I just think that I have to make the draws pay if he does have a draw, and he could easily have an 8 or something like that, so easy 3-bet. And after his cap, that gets me thinking that I'm just going to call down no matter what the card, really. And 7 of spades is pretty bad as far as cards go. And yeah, he had a monster draw on the turn, and he hit his draw on the river. However, the pot's so big at this point, 880 with 50 cents to call. There's no way we can fold without overpair, considering the possibility of other kinds of pairs and stuff like that. So in that situation, after the cap, after we 3-bet, a call down's definitely the best option. Because I mean, it isn't that only the straight draw got there. So only the 5 beats us or a 4. I guess. With the pot being this big, I don't see myself folding unless the flop was 4, 5, 6, and then the turn was 7, and then the river completed the flush draw as well. In which case we wouldn't be ahead nearly any of the time. But even then, with the pot size like this, I find things hard like that hard to fold. So yep. What else can I say about that? This guy, usually when you have a third passive player, it allows you to 3-bet more easily than if you were heads up against a normal fish at this limit. Maybe overpair isn't something you want to be 3-betting on the turn with. But when you're in multi-way situations like this, it's really a must to get the maximum protection and value out of your hand. Down on the bottom left-hand corner here, we were dealt Ace-Jack of Hearts, which is always a nice hand from an early position raiser, early midish position. And I chose to 3-bet. I think that's the correct play. And now we've got top pair, top clicker on a really draw heavy board. 6 Jack of clubs and 5 of hearts. That's pretty insane. So my plan is to bet all streets of value no matter what cards come, unless like it completes 4 to a flush or something like that of clubs. So yeah, we're betting the whole way and basically calling down to a raise, because with flush draws completing and stuff like that, I don't like to 3-bet, especially if you're a beginner at this limit. Don't really want to be 3-betting your made hands when much stronger made hands are quite likely. But yeah, if a king, queen, or ace, obviously an ace doesn't count. If a king or queen had fallen, I'd keep betting as well. A raise on this river would be a little bit tricky. I mean, some players like to wait till the river to raise their strong hands, but even then, apart from the 3 making the straight, it's pretty much a blank. So any point along the way, a call after a raise would be the correct play. I can't fold with the top pair here. Over here we were dealt Ace-9 offsuit. And after a limper and someone limping in the small blind, I decided to check on the big blind, though. I think a raise probably would have been more appropriate in this situation. And we've got top pair, middle kicker. Ace 10 or higher is unlikely. We're ahead most of the time here, unless against a weird 2 pair. And now I've made top 2 on the turn. No straights are possible until the river. Now, normal player at this limit, donking out on the river. I don't think these players are good enough for anti-free showdown donks, so I think this kind of indicates strength here, and a really obvious straight is completed. So if you're playing and you know that this player's kind of decent and he might be prone to doing this kind of move with something worse than top 2 pair, then you can raise him easily if you see him doing it with top pair and stuff like that. But I don't think we're ahead most of the time against a normal fish who donks out on this kind of river. So I decided against a raise here. I decided for the call. And yeah, he had a 4 in this situation. To be honest, I'm not sure how often, it depends on the players that you're playing with, how often you'll be ahead. But generally when 4 to a straight appears, I don't like to try and overplay my hands like top 2 pair. Although you will be ahead probably half the time, I don't think you're ahead most of the time, which is what you would need to raise his river bet. Though if we were 3-bet on the river after raising, you would know that you're for sure behind. But you wouldn't be able to fold as well, so it'd be kind of a crying call. So if you're behind, you're going to have to pay 2 big bets extra for the raise a lot of the time. I mean, that isn't to say that you shouldn't bet in that situation. That, like, if I was out of position, I would definitely bet even when 4 to a straight completes and call any raise, because you can never sort of check call that, because you lose too much value in the long run, because they might check behind if they're scared of it, but they would call otherwise if you just had bet anyway. Okay, so over here we have ourselves King 6 on the top left hand table here. Basically it was unraised pre-flop, and he limped, which is a really weak play, and maybe I should have raised with King 6. This kind of situation, if you have stats, a really good thing to do is look at his went to showdown value, and if it's quite low, like below 38 or something, below sort of mid 30s or below, I definitely advocate raising with less than premium hands. I mean, what can he be holding that's better than King 7, like 6? I think King 7 would definitely open raise here. I'm not too sure how this guy plays so far. But the other hand, when he had the straight before, you know, he was calling for a gut shot. He's not exactly going to win Player of the Year or anything. So he's pretty bad. We want to take advantage of it with probably a raise in this situation, just to induce him to fold on the flop of the turn most of the time. So he will fold most of the time in that situation. Therefore, this kind of becomes profitable because we raise it up to like 50 cents. Then he'll fold the flop most of the time or the turn. And we've also got an equity edge as well, probably, because I think that he would raise any ace from the small blind, and a lot of kings. So we're probably dominating him anyway. And if we hit a king or a 6, we could probably ahead, which is always good. But as played, I just checked here, and we've got the second nut flush draw and an overcard, I guess. Okay, because he checks to us, we've got an auto bet, and I think he can call pretty loosely on the flop here, and I just want to get him to fold again. I don't want to lose the initiative because I don't have that much showdown value. Although I would get a free showdown with my king high because I'm beating him a lot of the time if he hasn't got an ace. Most of the time, I think. So we've okay showdown value, but I think that we've still got decent fold equity because the pot's so small. And now we hit our king on the river. It's an easy option, an easy decision, obviously, with top pair. Not sure what he had, but he probably hit a pair along the way, so he's quite passive. If he didn't raise that. Now down in the bottom left-hand corner, we have pocket eights against an early position raiser and two callers. This is easy call. Well, another caller even came. So 4 players, we're going to get at least 5-way action. Easy call. We have an extreme implied odds because 5 players, someone's going to hit a hand and they're not going to want to fold, and if we get our set, we're going to be ahead most of the time. Now I opted for a donk bet here because I thought we might be able to get a raise out of Bad Girl, and unless he's holding a queen or a high pocket pair, which is less likely than overcards type of hand, expected overcards type of hand like ace king, ace jack sort of thing, I think we're going to be ahead of him most of the time. So I wanted to dunk out. Maybe he was going to raise with his overcards, thinking that no one had a queen. It's not drawy at all. I don't want to wait for the turn because my hand's very vulnerable against any card, anyone holding something that's higher than an 8. I mean, I was really hoping for the raise here, so maybe I could 3-bet possibly, and then call down to the more strength shown, because that would probably indicate a high pocket play hand. But I just didn't. Also, like, what if he just checked and they all checked because they knew that no one has a queen, and I'm going to be hit a lot of the time with my pocket pair like this. And then obviously no draws worrying me in that spot because I've already got a full house. So I'm just basically trying to protect my hand against kings, aces, jacks, 10s, and 9s coming out and invalidating my hand. So yeah, okay. Over here, we've got 10s in the bottom right hand table. There was a pre-flop raiser from MP3, and I 3-bet for because my equity edge. 10s is a nice hand. It can be over pair quite a lot of the time, and generally it just owns as a hand. I like 10s. It's sort of the separation from the highish pocket pairs from the lower ones. We get a cap from nice player. I'm thinking, oh damn, he's either on this flop he's either got me completely beaten and drawing to 2 outs, or I'm way ahead of him because he's got overcards, which is most of the time. Now because he capped, I'm thinking, okay, what if he's just doing it by poker strategy, full ring strategy? That means he has ace king, queens, kings, aces, and ace king actually makes up most of the combinations of those hands. So I'm going to be ahead a lot of the time. However, if I raise, he's probably not going to fold the flop, but he'll probably fold the turn, and I won't get much value out of it. However, he might think that I'm drawing if I call and might keep betting, hoping that I'll fold. So this is basically a classic way ahead, way behind situation. I definitely can't fold because the paired jacks, it makes jack unlikely, though it is possible if he's does cap a bit loose. So basically this is a classic way ahead, way behind situation where you want to lose the least against the worst hands, and you're quite sure that he'll probably bluff at least a couple of streets. Thus you get value against the worst hand. And in this situation we were against a better hand, which is one of the possibilities. I mean, queens, kings and aces don't make up that many hand combinations compared to sort of ace-king offsuit and ace-king suited, though that they don't contribute much. And if he does cap a bit looser, we might have ace-queen off as well in the mix. And ace-jack off, which doesn't really threaten us too much because there's already 2 jacks out here. So I think in that situation you have to really call down. I think a king or an ace destroys our equity. A king falling or an ace, that would mean 100% have to fold in a full ring situation because all the ace-king hands beat you. The possibly looser ace-queen hands beat you if the ace falls down. A queen, not so much a threat, but a king or an ace destroys your equity, and it isn't that many cards, so a lot of the time you will be able to call down. But against a cap, an ace or a king, just fold it while you can. Just get out as cheaply as you can as well. Okay. Here we have King Jack offsuit, a reasonable hand. I quite like King Jack. The pairs stand up a lot of the time, even the jack, because there aren't usually many queen or ace isn't too likely to fall on the board. I opt for a raise from this position. What are we in? Code MP3, MP2, so it's pretty marginal raise from this position. That doesn't matter. Okay, this flop is a bit of a disaster for us because random cold calling hands from these horrible players sort of shotgun this range, just hit it from all angles. I mean, someone could easily be holding a spade draw, a 4, 5, or a 6, or a 7, or a 3. I definitely think that a continuation bet in this spot is suicide. You won't be ahead a lot of the time against these random hands. King high could be good, but it's not even worth continuation betting. However, as played, this guy does donk out, and for me this is a really, really easy fold because of the players behind us, and we could be dominated as well, possibly if he's holding jack something, king something. It's possible. Yeah, mainly scared about these guys raising behind me though, and we were getting 1 to 10, but for those reasons I don't think it's the right move in this situation. And yeah, he was playing it straightforward. He flopped 2 pair, so we would have had horrible reverse implied odds, and you got to account for that in some of these situations. Basically the money you lose because you're already behind, and if you hit your out, you're going to raise and then get re-raised. That was kind of the more rare situation where he's already flopped something extremely strong. Most of the time that will be a pair. Some of the time it will be a draw. But a lot of the time you will be drawing live to your outs. But because of the players behind us, I would fold. I would definitely call heads up against this guy and note him in the future that he donks, and sort of try and see what he donks with. But in that situation, even if he hadn't bet out, you can avoid the continuation bet altogether on a draw-heavy, non-scary flop like that. Here we go down the bottom right-hand corner. We've got pocket jacks. I love pocket jacks, especially in this kind of situation. Here we have 7, 10, 8. Not the best flop, really drawy, and we've got quite a large pot here, four-way. However, we do have a gut shot, although our 2 jack outs aren't really clean because any 9 would beat us in that case. However, that also if they have a draw, that means it's less likely for them to draw out because we've got some jacks so you'd only be drawing to 6 outs for an open-ended straight draw in that case. So if I'm raised at any point at all, the flop raise I would 3-bet, the turn raise it's close because it seems like he's got a monster and he's waiting for the turn to raise. Like if he was trying to protect his made hand, he'd probably do it on the flop, because in a heads up situation you can wait till a safe turn card, but in a multi-way situation you're giving up your equity edge too much of the time. But yeah, so I would raise the flop, or probably raise the turn of bet as well if someone donked out. I mean, yeah, I would. On second thought, for protection, I would definitely raise the turn as well. Well, I wouldn't raise it after. Yeah, if someone donked out, I would raise it, and then if he called and then donked on the turn again, I'd probably raise it again, because that can easily be a pair. Most of the time, Jack 9 isn't very likely. 6-9's possible, but yeah, I wouldn't put it past these players to do stuff like that with Jack 9 and calling pre-flop with 6-9 and stuff like that. But 6-9 suited in a multi-way pot isn't so bad a call, but it's just not likely. And the queen on the river, that doesn't change much at all. If I'm raised, I can't fold. The pot's too big. Is basically the reasoning there. Because I'm probably ahead 1 out of 10 or 11 times. Alright, on the bottom left hand table here we've got pocket jacks against 2 limpers, and we raise it up to try and isolate them. Some people limp fold even, so we get great value out of that. And basically want to kick out the small blind and the big blind, as they're not really wanted in the hand, because jacks isn't something you want to be playing in a really large pot, unless you're playing for set value, which some of the time you would be if it was a really bad flop, like if the possibility of overcards comes and stuff like that. But here we have second pair with the open end straight draw, and we're most likely ahead already. We've only got 1 overcard, that's not too bad for us. Ace isn't exactly the card I wanted to see, because I don't want people to fold worse hands like king high and stuff like that. I'd rather that they call down to their 3 outs, which they don't have odds to call for really. And so after these 2 check to me, I decide for a check behind, because not that I'd have a hard decision on the turn to call if I was raised. Like if someone check raises the ace here, which is quite likely, or maybe even the draw if they're quite good, and they know that I can fold a better hand, I would have a difficult decision on the river, because I'm probably not ahead, but the pot would be so big it would be kind of hard to fold. I do have my redraw out, which is basically after they improved on the ace, any king or an 8 would give me the best hand, presumably. So that's why I opted for the check behind here. Also, there's two people still in the hand. The only options really for reasonable hands would be the draw or an ace or king high, and ace high now beats me. If someone had bet out and it was only 1 bet to call, then I could perhaps call a river bet. But as played, I don't think there's an additional value bet on the river. At a high limit, I'd definitely bet that river, because I know that they would have bet the queen or the ace earlier on. However, these guys are passive and there's 2 of them, and I'm just trying to play a kind of ABC, betting the hands where I'm quite sure I'm ahead. Maybe at this limit, if I know they're really bad, perhaps I can find some kind of, if they have a really high win to showdown value, should I say, because they can still be bad and have a low win to showdown value, which means they're playing a good percentage of their hands, even though they're playing it passively. So really, I just wanted to play it safe with the check behind there, although you probably can get, there's probably a bit EV plus to maybe bet the river if they both check to you in that way. They will have the ace or the queen reasonably often, I think. And if you were raised on the river, if someone tried to check raise the river, well, 1, they're really horrible. but 2, you can probably find a fold as well, if that kind of situation arose. And now up in the upper right table, a couple hands later, I was dealt Ace King of Hearts against an undergun raiser, and then he capped, which if he's playing according to poker strategy, raising standards, I'm either behind or I'm tying. If he's just raising Ace Kings and Queens and Kings. I mean, like, sort of Ace King suited, Ace King off, or Pocket Kings and Pocket Queens. I certainly can't fold, because how do I know that he doesn't have a looser? He could possibly have a looser range. Ace King offsuit's quite a likely hand for him to have. I raise the flush draw, because if he's got Ace King, which is the most likely holding, because for example King King would have to be the remaining 2 kings in the deck, and Queen Queen isn't hugely likely. There's a queen already out there, sorry. And if he is Ace King as well, raising here basically pushes my little equity I have over him, because I do have an edge over him because of my nut flush draw. So in that case, I'm getting him to pay more, and also if he's got a looser range, I'm getting him to pay more for maybe a queen hand or something like that. So, and he donks out on the river, which is interesting. I'm not sure what many worse hands would do that here. But so therefore I can't really find a raise, because I could be possibly behind already. So I just decide, well, okay, I'm getting 1 to 10, folds out of the question, so I'm just going to call and see what he has. And he had pocket aces. I thought he would have 3-bet that turn. A good player would have 3-bet the turn. And this is one of the situations where we were behind, unfortunately. Okay, this is going to be the last hand of the video. I've got Ace Queen offsuit in the bottom left hand table against someone in the small blind. It's a heads up situation, and he raises, and I'm obviously going to 3-bet because his raising range is pretty loose from the small blind, assuming he's reasonable. This flop isn't too scary for him. It's quite draw heavy. I could easily be ahead here, but at the same time he could be holding a jack or a pocket pair or something like that. I'm betting because I can possibly get a better hand to fold in the form of a small pair, and hopefully if an ace, a king, queen or an ace falls on the river, firstly I'll be improving, secondly it's scary and maybe it'll incline him to fold. Also I have the nut flush draw, so this is kind of a semi-bluff continuation bet. I don't know anything about him personally, but this is kind of interesting. He donks the river. I don't think him having a full house is very likely unless he was holding pocket 8s, because he should have raised 9s, because there's 2 9s out there. He should have raised trips earlier. So I think this is an easy river raise and easy cap, because, well, first it doesn't make sense. Also there are quite a few worse hands out there, like maybe the king high flush draw that got there. Because he could have called the flop with sort of king nothing, because he calls flop with any 2, then he got the flush draw on the turn, so therefore he has to call that. And now the final heart comes, and if he's completed his flush, he's definitely going to 3-bet it if he's okay. So yep, I got better value of that. With the nut flush draw, you can't be calling a river donk, even though it's paired, because this play just doesn't make sense up to then. So you have to try and make sense of the earlier play in relation to the river now. Because a set or a 2-pair, if he'd given me a lot of resistance, if he'd sort of raised the turn, and then, so yeah, sorry, if he'd check raised the turn, and then I would have called because I've got my nut flush draw on a couple of overcards, the turn brings us, he bets, I would still raise, however to his 3-bet, maybe I'd just call instead, because a turn raise looks more like a strong hand, more likely that he's holding a full house in that case. And perhaps at this limit the cap would be a bit overplayed, but in this case it doesn't really make sense for him to be holding a better hand than me in this spot. Yeah, but that was the final hand of the video. I hope you liked it. I'll be making some more in the future, so just keep on the lookout and watch them multiple times if you can, because I often find it helps to maybe reinforce, if you see a particularly good move that can be applied to a lot of situations that you run into daily, then it helps to have watched it a couple of times so you thoroughly understand the reasoning behind such a move. And so firstly, you can apply it properly. Secondly, don't get into trouble with applying it wrongly, and you might lose money if it's against the wrong kind of player, etc. So I'd say just re-watch the videos, reread the articles, and remember to post hands in the sample hands forum. And you're basically guaranteed to become a winning player as a beginner. So good luck to you. This is Terrorblade from Poker Strategy signing out.